This is Markus Vanhala from Insomnium, Omnium Gatherum, I Am the Night, and Cemetery Skyline, and whatnot. And you are watching RichardMetalFan.
Hey, what's up, guys? Episode 283 of Richard Metalfan Interviews, calling from Zoom, and I'm here with the great Markus Vanhala from Omnium Gatherum, Insomnium, I Am the Night, Malpractice, Wolf Trap, and new band Cemetery Skyline, and probably a plethora of other bands I don't know about. So, how are you doing today, Markus?
I'm doing fine. It's surprisingly hot here in Finland.
Yeah, yeah,
Really busy with everything at the moment, like all the bands. You forgot Manito, my
oh,
old band, which is reforming next month for a 20-year anniversary debut album show. So
ooh, you got an exclusive here, folks.
yeah. So really a lot of rehearsing stuff, old and new at the moment, the whole summer.
Yeah,
So
so
wait,
you have like a whole like encyclopedia right here. So I guess like the first thing I want to do since I want to jump right into it, I believe one of your first bands was called Seer of Curses. Like, tell me about that. Was that one of your bands like before you started up Omnium Gathering?
uh, no, that was actually a project of Ville from Horna, the Finnish black metal band, and I think I was something like 16. We just had made like first Omnium Gatherum demo, and Horna, what is Villes pseudonym? Satraug, not Sagrat, Satraug from Horna. He liked the OG's demo, and he just asked me to do something with his new band called Seer of Curses, and I just went to Lappeenranta to record some stuff, and it was cool. Back in the day, we were young. It was never released, but actually, this year that project came to life after what 25 years plus. As Ville got this new project, which was called, I think, I don't even remember, was it Graven Sin, like power metal or 80s Black Sabbath style doomy heavy metal. And then Ville asked me, like, do you want to just do this old project ready now and play some solos to his stuff? So that was a nice question. Nobody ever asked me about Seer of Curses, and it actually became live this year, but under the name of Graven Sin, like I said.
Awesome. Like
Swart
I
record in
like
Finland.
I'm digging deep. Like nobody ever talks about this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then tell me about like forming Omnium Gathering because you all formed in 96 in Finland. So how'd you get to know the guys?
Well, it's lifetime ago. I was 14 years old, and we just formed a band with some friends. There was not that many local buddies playing like death metal, and so we just hit up me and my buddy Olli, who is still doing like Omnium Gatherum cover artworks. He was singing and playing another guitar, and it was basically us two forming the band, and with some local dudes and from the school. And as you might know, it's when you form a band when you are 14 years old, and now I'm 43, so there's nobody in the first lineup anymore around because people change
Yeah, you're
priorities.
the OG.
Yeah, I'm the original gangster. Yeah, but Olli is still around doing these cover artworks, like I said. So at least my main original buddy is still here.
Yeah. But tell me about some of those like early demos, like the Forbidden Decay, the self-titled, and even Garden's Temple. Like, tell me about those. Like, I'm always curious about Forbidden Decay because I can't find it anywhere. I can find the other two demos.
I'm pretty happy about that. it's a it was a cassette demo, and basically, well, when you're young, you don't plan too much. So we just wanted to make a demo, and we didn't know anything about doing a demo. There was not such a place like studio back in the days in the mid 90s in my shitty local town. So we just got a 4-tracker rented by some friend, and of course we didn't know anything else about except the name, and you can record some stuff with that 4-tracker. So we basically couldn't do anything with that, but we just started immediately recording the demo. So it sounds really grim and harsh and cool. So it's really bad sounding demo. So
Yeah. And then I was like around that time, a little after that, you also formed the Manitou in 98. Tell me about like that band. How did that band come to be?
that was a bit like a older guys from my town, like, and we had an Iron Maiden cover band back in the day, and then they just asked me to join their Manitoba band that they were already having around, and it was more like a heavy metal and progressive metal style. Everyone was like huge Dream Theater and Symphony X fans back at the time in that band, and we just wanted to do our mix of that, and we did 3 albums, I think, 3 full-length albums to some European labels, and we did a lot of shows, but only one abroad Finland, which was like a Latvian festival. That was a trip to remember for sure, but actually now after 20 years, because the Mad Moon Rising first album of Manitoba was released 2004, so we are reforming to play that album on one local festival called Dark River Festival, and
Yeah.
we had first rehearsals, and our singer said like, "God damn, this sounds better than 20 years ago."
Yeah.
So,
And hard to believe that album is now 20 years old. I mean, I was obviously in 4th grade when that album came out. So how do you feel about that album now, like 20 years later?
well, I hadn't listened to it for years and years, really. And now when I had to learn the songs, I was happily surprised. It's been holding time quite nicely, and the songs are really good on that album. So
Yeah.
maybe I can say I'm still proud of it. And
Yeah.
20 years, it's just a crazy idea how fast 20 years.
Yeah. It doesn't even feel like it's been 20 years. It feels like it's only been like 10.
Yeah, maximum 10.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then I know you
still
also,
feel like 20 years old myself, so
yeah.
I
Yeah,
was 0 years old when I made that album, I see.
Yeah. And then I know you also do like some session work, because I know you also contributed some guitars to Elenium. You did like there are 2 promos from 2000 and 2001. So tell me about that.
How you're really digging deep. I don't even remember these
Yeah.
things.
You could thank Metal Archives for like listing all this shit.
Yeah. Well, Elenium was the band of Jukka, Omnium Gatherum singer, and
Yeah, which little would he know.
Yeah. And back in the days we were buddies, and we still are buddies, of course, but like buddy bands, and we were doing a lot of shows together always with Omnium Gatherum, Elenium, and Amoral from Finland. And also like guitar player of Elenium is now playing in Beast in Black, and Jukka is in Omnium Gatherum, so people are still around, and they just asked me to come to the studio. And as I said, like back in the whatever 90s, end of 90s, things were different than now. I didn't even heard the stuff before going to studio, so I just had to do some freestyle soloing over the songs I just heard. But that was back then. Nowadays sometimes it's too boring because everything is so easy to polish to perfection nowadays, so you kind of lack something about that 90s true spirit of living in the moment.
Yeah, totally. And then and then kind of jumping back in the Omnium Gatherum, going into 2001, 2002, you sort of did the Wastrel and also Steal the Light. And I kind of lumped them into 2 because it's all like the same songs. They're just like re-recorded. So tell me about like that period, because I think all those songs, like both versions, both kick ass.
Yeah. It's a long time ago. Yeah, we did a Wastrel demo in here locally. Finally, we got to go to real studio and I got a real engineer, so we didn't do it ourselves. That's probably the first Omnium. Well, it's the second Omnium Gatherum demo we did in actual studio. Gardens, Temples, This Hell was the first one, and slowly we learned to do things the correct way and finding like studios and thinking that the sound quality actually matters, not only the songs. And then we did the Wastrel demo, and we immediately sent it to many labels. I just packed every CD I could find and sent it to international waters. And pretty soon we got feedback from Rage of Achilles label from UK, and they wanted to sign us. And still we were young and needed money. Not money when you never got from that album, but we signed immediately the contracts, and after that we signed just Rage of Achilles, many labels sent us mails that they want to sign us too. Like, but we already signed with the first one who contacted.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like what was it like about that label that made you guys be like, this is the one?
because it was the first one.
So I guess the first choice is the best choice in some cases.
I'm not sure if it was the best choice because we got really nice offers after that, but we were not happy that we already signed and we were already in the studio re-recording the bass trail demo for Steal the Light, and I don't even know why we did it. Well, maybe it's a bit better than the actual demo, but that was the label's choice that please re-record this stuff, and
yeah,
that's what we did.
Yeah, and then kind of going into 2003, I gotta love to talk about Gore Penetration with the Fetish Concept album. I think that's a fucking brutal album. Like I'm a fan of death metal, hence why I'm wearing Cannibal Corpse shirt. So tell me about like that album, because that's just it's ridiculous.
Well, that we were highly influenced back at the time of your shirt, Cannibal Corpse, and this. I can't remember the album, which was Gore Obsessed and Bloodthirst album probably came out.
Yeah.
When we were doing Gore Penetration stuff, and we were highly influenced by that. And I've always been a huge fan of like 90s American technical death metal, like Death and Atheist and Cynic and, well, Morbid Angel, Dayside 2 and Cannibal Corpse. So it was something. I've always had this urge to do all kinds of music. I'm just musical ADHD. I would die and be bored to play only one style of music. So that's my blessing and curse. It's always been. So from progressive heavy metal to black metal to technical death metal, and Gore Penetration was just like a fun project to treat with these American technical death metal things, and with really twisted lyrics. Our drummer, who was also a drummer of Omnium Gatherum back in the time, he was just sitting in his office bored and writing these lyrics about all kind of pervert things.
And then kind of going into the debut Omnium Gatherum full-length Spirit, it's an August Light. I thought that was a really good debut album. So what was sort of like the thought process and like the writing and recording like for the debut full-length Omnium Gatherum album?
Well, we were pretty well prepared, of course. As always, the debut album of the band we were already doing this years and years before the debut album. So we kind of had a lot of songs for the album. So the album was kind of like best of demo eras of Omnium Gatherum. And of course, we were really, spirits were high in the August Light. We were really into doing this thing because signed to an international label, doing debut album, that was something we always aimed to do. That was our priority. So it was really good times.
Yeah.
Of course, had really small budget for the album. I think the whole album was recorded in 4 days. And
wow.
And to like not even computer Pro Tools, it was these ADAT video cassettes. So you have only one round to do that.
Yeah.
So that's like a real deal.
Yeah, because I know like Black Sabbath like recorded their debut album in like 1 day.
Yeah. Even that 4 days, that was quite fast even back in the day, because better studios like Finnvox already, most of the Finnish metal albums of that year were already made in computer studio with like a lot of editing. So we did it quite old school, not because we wanted, of course we did wanted it, but we didn't have that big budget. So the album became really rough and harsh, aggressive sounding, and I still like it. Like it's showing really true spirit.
Yeah. And then when Spirits and August Light was first released, did you just start like touring outside of Finland for the first time, or was it still just locally around like Helsinki and stuff?
We mainly only played in Finland. I think we did maybe Estonian festival or something. That was the first ever Omnium Gatherum show outside Finland. Because we didn't have a manager, we didn't have booking agency, we didn't know anything about anything. So Omnium Gatherum's long career have always been learning about your mistakes, and we really started like DIY, do-it-yourself style, did everything by ourselves, and we didn't know what to do. So that's why it took ages for us to emerged out of Finland.
Yeah, because I always feel like I always say like the debut album is always like a learning experience.
Yeah, definitely. And we, of course, we thought like, now we released an album, now we're gonna tour the rest of
Yeah,
our lives, and didn't actually go that way.
yeah. And then kind of jumping into 2004, you did the second Omnium Gatherum album, Years and Waste, a very quick turnaround from Spirit and August Light. And did you like start writing for that album right after their Spirit and August Light was first released?
Yeah, I maybe have to say like, I don't know, my personal least favorite album of Omnium Gatherum is either Years in Waste or Stuck Here on Snake's Way.
Yeah.
Maybe we didn't have much time to write album stuff for Years in Waste, so it's written quite fast. But in that time, between these albums, Rage of Achilles label went bankruptcy, so there was a lot of stress because we were already in the studio making the album, and it was a stressful period for the band. But in the end, Nuclear Blast came to save us, and they then gave us a really nice budget to make the album. And that also something that really ruined Years in Waste album, I think, because Spirit and August Light is really aggressive and rough and real album, and Years in Waste, here comes the polishing, and I don't remember, we recorded it really long time and with computer stuff, so it's too polished and light sounding. It's not evil or rough at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and then kind of going back into Manitou, I like talked about the last two albums being Deadlock and No Signs of Wisdom. Like I was just checking it out in preparation for the interview. So tell me about like those albums.
We got signed to, I think, Metal Heaven label from Germany or something, and
Yep.
the label was quite all right, and we got nice budget to do the albums. But our focus had already went over the Dream Theater, and we were highly inspired by Bruce Dickinson's solo material and Halford solo material, so it became a bit more heavy metal albums, those both two. I still like those albums. They're great albums, man.
Yeah, they definitely have that kind of like proggy kind of like style, kind of like Dream Theater, like you mentioned. And that's like the whole vibe I get when I listen to those albums.
Yeah, proggy heavy metal, and listening those guitar solos, I'm thinking like I played guitar a lot back then.
Yeah.
And I was focusing solos, which I'm not doing that much anymore, of course, still, but main focus is always writing a song nowadays.
Yeah. And then kind of going back to Omnium Gatherum, the next album I'll talk about is Stuck Here on Snake's Way. Great album, first album with, of course, Yuka on the vocals. So what was that like working with him, being that was his first record with the band, like new vocalist and everything?
Yeah, also Apa joined the band, who is still in the band for the keyboard. So it's two original gangsters from that album still on board. And well, things got twisted with our old singer and weird things happened. And then at some point, I think it was Janne, a bass player, who kind of fired him in the rehearsals. And then we were just thinking like what to do next. And I only had one singer in mind from our buddy band Elenium, and I called Jukka with my big cell phone. Like back in the days, they were really big, and I just asked like, this is a weird question, but do you want to join Omnium Gatherum? And Jukka just answered like, yeah, that's a really weird question, but yes, I will.
Yeah.
So this conference took like 1 minute for Jukka to decide to join Omnium Gatherum, and rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, and were you kind of like nervous like debuting a singer? Because anytime when bands like change singers, there's always that thing of will it work or won't it work? Because like for example with Iron Maiden, like when they transitioned from Paul Di'Anno to Bruce Dickinson, a lot of people were used to like hearing like the Paul Di'Anno voice, but when they put out Number of the Beast, people were like, wow. And I feel like that kind of solidified like the Maiden sound.
Yeah, sort of it's like that. They're really different kind of singers with Antti and Jukka, but we didn't think about much back in the days about that. We just continued doing it on the run this, and then I have to say the Stuck Here on Snake's Way, it's a bit like a learning process again. Like the new singer of the band, you can really hear on the album that we don't know what we wanna sound like. There's my weird melodic death metal songs, and another songwriter back in the time, Harry, he had his Entombed Vibes, and then Jukka growling all it together like a barking dog. So it's a weird album. If I could go back in time, I would maybe do one album out of Years in Waste and Stuck Here on Snake's Way. You could maybe get one decent album out of those two. And
yeah.
And again, like we had really difficult times with the band before the album, also with the singer change, but we all again had a label change because
you're on Candlelight for this one.
Yeah, we signed to Candlelight, and they did the budget were again really small for this album. So back to basics, so called.
Yeah, and what was like playing shows like for that cycle? Like, of course, with Yuka on vocals, were you kind of like nervous, like wondering like how the fans would react?
No, it was all really natural. Jukka's really good, so he really took our fans, and they loved him since the day one, and really good times serving stages together. And I think after Stuck Here on Snake's Way, we did our first tours outside. Which was,
do you remember like the first tours outside of Finland?
We did headlining tour in UK, which is weird as a first tour ever for the band, like headline tour. So you can imagine it was a really punky tour, pubs and stuff, but we loved it.
Yeah.
And then we did a Portugal tour with Caliban, not Portugal, Iberian, Portugal and Spain. Weird tours. And then the best tour, the actual real tour we did, 2007, I think, was UK tour with Dark Tranquillity. And that was when we felt now we're getting somewhere, because Dark Tranquillity was our favorite band back in the time of forming the band. And we shared the bus with those guys and toured 2 weeks in UK. So that was kind of a mental start of a real touring with the band and feeling like, oh, we are like rock stars.
Yeah. Did you start like touring America at that time, or was it later on?
It took a while. I think the first US tour we did was after Beyond album. That was again with Dark Tranquillity, 2014.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing you in Atlanta. You're living in Atlanta.
Yeah, I live like 35 minutes north in this town called Kennesaw.
Yeah, the first Omnium Gatherum show ever in North American soil was in Atlanta, in the old Masquerade.
Yeah, like, do you ever remember like the old Masquerade back in the day? Like when bands like load in their shit, they would always have like this little like elevator thing that would like come down on a rope, and then people would load it in, and then it would just like rise back up.
Yeah, definitely, because that was my first take on American music venue.
Oh, and I love how it was happened to be in my home state.
Yeah,
and
old Masquerade, that's a great venue.
Yeah, it's still one of my favorite Atlanta venues. Like I go to so many shows there and do like interviews and stuff, like to the point where this like the staff pretty much knows me by that point.
Yeah, and then the good old Claremont Lounge, really near in the neighborhood. Like if you know the.
I think so. It sounds familiar. That definitely sounds familiar. And the new one is great. Like if you ever notice like those hallways like in the new Masquerade, like it almost goes like really long. It almost feels like a maze. Like you can get lost in there sometimes.
Oh yeah. We just played the new Masquerade like 2 months ago probably.
Yeah, and I'm pissed. And I'm pissed I missed that show.
Yeah, we were playing in the middle hall, and the small hall was played by Rivers of Nihil, which I love. And the big hall.
Yeah, I remember that. I actually had Ati on a while, not too long ago, and he was telling me about that.
Yeah. It was a house full of metal on that day.
Yeah. But then tell me about like the next album, The Red Shift. I thought that's a really great album. A quick turnaround from, of course, Stuck Here on Snake's Way. Did you start like writing for that album right after they're Stuck Here on Snake's Way?
Oh yeah, we did, because like I said, Stuck Here on Snake's Way is not that good album, but it was a start of like starting to act like a real band with touring and stuff. So Red Shift, we were having a really good boogie in the band, and we were really getting somewhere. And now we knew that after this album, we are going to tour and act like a real band, have like real band shirts, which was like a huge, having a merch company for the band. it sounds like ridiculous, but back in the day when you have like an official shirt of your album cover artwork, it was the biggest thing ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a really good period for the band. And the Redshift album, I could maybe say it's like a breakthrough album for the band. That was the album when things started to happen, and it's a better sounding album because we got to work with my teenager hero Dan Svaner, who was engineering and mixing the album, and he did a really good job. So
nice. And then kind of going in that same year in 2008, you did Malpractice. You joined up with them and you did the Triangular album. I like that album. It's also another very good progressive metal album. So how'd you hook up with those guys?
they are from Kouvola, which is next to my city, and Manito played some shows with Malpractice back in the day, and then we get to know each other. And there was not too many prog metal heads in our state, so it was natural that Jonas asked me to join the band. And I was scared like hell going on studio with those guys because they are like monster players, like my influencers. So I was really honored to get to play with those masters. And
yeah,
we recorded Triangular, I think, in Astia studio with Anssi Kippo, who is this Children of Bodom engineer. So a lot of big things for myself happening with that album, and I think the album turned out great.
And then kind of flash forward to 2010, because you also do some more session work, because I know you contributed guitar leads to Reinventing the Past by Odyssey, and you also did 3 by Eve Master. Like, tell me about like those bands.
Yeah, Odyssey was Dan Svano's band. So surprisingly, like I said, my teenager hero, I love Edge of Sanity and Nightingale and Dan Svano's Moon Power album and Old Bloodbath and all this. And then when Dan recorded the Redshift, he digged my guitar playing and he immediately asked if I wanna play some leads on his solo adventure Odyssey, and of course I had to say yes. And yes. Eve Master was one old friends from somewhere down the Finnish roads, and that we played a few times, and that was just a friend's work.
Yeah. And then kind of going back to Omnium Gatherum 2011, New World Shadows. Definitely like that album. It has a kind of like a bit of a darker kind of like tone to it. So tell me about making that album.
We really put a lot of effort for that album. I think it was 3 years in between Redshift and New World Shadows, and Harry, the old Omnium Gatherum guitar player, he just disappeared bit after Redshift. So before New World Shadows, we got like songwriting credits 50-50 with Harry. And Harry was always more stoner rock and Entombed and Cathedral and this kind of stuff. So with New World Shadows, I had only my own hands to write all the music for the album, and I really had the spirit of now I want to show what I'm capable of doing alone. So it was kind of a will of power, that album, and I think that came out really well.
Yeah. And then going to 2012, you did a Wolf Trap with their album Rock and Roll Illumination. Like, tell me about that, because I know it's just like a hard rock band from Koita, Finland.
Kotka, yeah,
Kotka.
That's mine. Yeah. I really hate that name, Rock and Roll Illumination, but the singer insisted you should not put the name rock and roll to album title. If you're not Motorhead, rock and roll that's lawful. But Wolf Trap was basically like a continuum of Manitou. It was four same guys the last Manitou lineup had, and then we just continued with new singer and new drummer.
So Manitou 2.0.
Yes, like a hard rock version. That was not anymore progressive metal. That was pure hard rock with your Texas Stetsons on and cowboy boots and
That's wild, man.
Cowboy boots in wintry Finland. So
Yeah. And then kind of going back to Omnium Gatherum 2013 with Beyond. I definitely like that album. Definitely probably one of my favorite albums from you guys. So tell me about like playing that because I know you recently did it on the set, played the album in full on the 70,000 Tons of Metal cruise. So what was that like, sort of like revisiting that album and how'd the idea to come to be to play that in full?
I still think like Beyond is OG's fan favorite album. It always became out that it's fans love it that album, and I also think it's one of our best efforts so far, of course. And now it was like 10 years from Beyond, I think. So we played last year in Dark River Festival. They ordered exclusive Beyond set and we played it and it was too much fun. So we redid it in 70K and now next January we are playing it on a European tour.
Yeah.
And Insomnium plays Shadows of the Dying Sun and OG plays Beyond. So
wow, that's
like fan favorite albums
yeah.
on the road.
And then speaking of Insomnium, because I know it was like around a little after that, before that, you actually joined up with the band. So how'd you hook up with Insomnium?
It always goes like this. With like I joined Malpractice before we did Beyond, and then Jonas from Malpractice joined Omnium Gatherum, and then we are living in a small country, you know, not too many metal people playing around small circles. And I played my first show with Insomnium back in 2007, and I think 2010 I did most of the festival shows with them because villas were busy, so I was always filling up either one of the villas. So then at some point they just asked me 2010, I think, that or 11, that do I want to join band full time? And of course I had to say yes.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have my calendar 200% full back then yet. So I was thinking like maybe playing with Omnium Gatherum and Insomnium, do bands which are touring a bit, that makes a one full touring calendar. But
yeah, and then tell me about
I know what's gonna happen in upcoming years.
Then tell me about making like your first record with Insomnium, Shadows of the Dying Sun. I definitely love this. This is actually my introduction to Insomnium. I remember seeing like the music video for While We Sleep, and I was like, whoa, what is this? It sounds a lot darker. And so I feel like I get like the whole vibe with the album artwork. So what was sort of like making this album, like being that was like your first record with Insomnium?
I was really happy to work with these guys. I did some small arrangement stuff and bit songwriting for One for Sorrow with Neilo already when I was not in the band. So I know how they work. So, and I was really happy to join the songwriting team of the band like full time. And that was my main thing when I joined the band. I asked like, if I'm going to join, I want to also do some writing. And they were like, of course you're invited. And had really good times on writing that album. We did that quite a long time, I think 2 years or something, and we rehearsed it in my parents' summer cabin in the woods, but it was like in the middle of. I wrecked my Jeep's Cherokee driving to the rehearsals, and
oh shit.
Oh, the rehearsals were pretty expensive in that sense.
Yeah. And you know, this year does also mark 10 years of Shadows of the Dying Sun. So how do you feel about this album now, like a decade later?
I still feel the album. It's that album, and same with Omnium Gatherum Beyond. Those albums like are kind of like milestones for the band, and it was almost same year. I think Beyond was released like maybe a year ago.
Yeah, 2013.
Yeah. So those were really good times.
Yeah. And I know that
bands.
yeah. And I know also the same year you did the Shadows, you also did the latest Malpractice album, Turning Tides. So tell me about like that.
Well, actually, Turning Tides was recorded years before, and we had the last rehearsal of Malpractice in 2010 maybe. So that was released a bit like retrospectively. I don't know why. We got some US label behind Malpractice. I don't even remember the name of the label.
Yeah.
There was too much things starting to happen on those years, and I was like constantly on tour or studio, but I was really happy to be busy. And
yeah. And then I know you also in 2016 you did the next Omnium Gatherum album, Gray Heavens. I like this album, so tell me about like making this album.
yeah, what would I? We were really onto something after Beyond. Like we started touring US. I think we did 2 US tours, and we played Japan and Australia, a lot of European touring. So we were really growing as a band and had like high hopes on hitting the studio for the next album and doing Grey Heavens. And I think that went all right. That's a collection of nice songs like Frontiers, and that we still play live in every show. Frontiers and Skyline and stuff. And
yeah, I feel like it's like signature kind of like Omnium Gatherum songs.
Yeah, maybe I have to say, like, from my life from after Beyond, it gets really blurry because it's like a pipeline just going, being really busy and making all the stuff before the COVID hits. So I was constantly on the road or in the studio, and I don't know how I got all those songs, for example, the Grey Heavens, written, because I was never home and I never write on the road. So
yeah, but do you
some
ever
kind of musical psychosis to get those things done.
Yeah, but if you're but on the road, do you ever have like not like songs, but like ideas?
Yeah, maybe like riff here and riff there and listening some music, and that's a trick that every musician I know uses, but nobody ever tells publicly that listening to other people's music and then just write some notes, like steal this part and change it.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff you can do on the road, like listening to whatever Jefferson Starship, and then, oh yeah, this is a cool part, I want to steal this too. Something completely different. And then in the sound checks you come up with some guitar riffs and stuff. So maybe that's what you can do on the road. But other than that, I always need my personal space and isolation to make real songs composed.
Well said, man. And then I know that same year, you with Insomnium, you dropped pretty much I would consider a masterpiece, the Almighty Winter's Gate. So tell me about like that song, because I know it's split up in a few parts, but it's like I consider it like you guys' masterpiece. So tell me about like making that.
Well, we already got the idea when we were doing the last rehearsals for Shadows of the Dying Sun. So it was, again, the cabin in the woods in the middle of the night, completely drunk. We were just listening to Edge of Sanity Crimson and said, like, this would be really cool to do this kind of album, like only one song, 40 minutes. And then we were just like, let's do it. That's the next album. Let's do it fast. And Century Media, our label, was like, all right, sounds like a commercial suicide, because Shadows of the Dying Sun was like the album that got Insomnium to like a flying to the stars. And then next we want to do a 40-minute single.
Yeah.
But they trusted our instinct and it went really well. Somehow we got the album composed, and it was really easy. Ville had some parts, I had some parts, and Niilo had some parts. And then we just had a quick meeting, like, your part sounds like a middle part, and this is ending, and we are still lacking bridge, and it became really easily together. And last writing session for Winter's Gate was, we were in 70,000 Tons of Metal cruise for the first time ever with Insomnium, and we were just bit hangovers with Will, and we missed the meeting with Century Media boss. And we were just listening to demos and writing those together, and then we played that to Century Media people afterwards in the same cruise, and they loved it. And somehow our gambling was all right.
Yeah.
So our commercial suicide was not the end.
Yeah. And it's a great because that was like that cycle was the Winter Gaze was the first time I actually saw Insomnium. You did that tour with Epica and Lacuna Coil in 2017. That was the first time I ever saw Insomnium.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that was a
That's
great
a
show.
weird line of band, but it was a really great tour, and I loved playing Winter's Gate on live because it was something completely different that I had used to do. Not like your usual songs. It just goes on and on 40 minutes, and we did the decision with the stage production that no front lights, so the whole stage was really like dark and dusky. So it
Yeah,
was really
and it
nice
does
to
give
watch.
off try to like set like the whole mood and vibe with that.
Yeah, and having this like a 3 minute piano pause in the middle of the set and just going behind my guitar amplifier to have a beer always with the drummer Markus, and that was a good
Yeah.
stage time.
Nice. Then kind of going into 2018, you did Omnium Gatherum with The Burning Cold. I like this album. Of course, this was actually the first time I saw Omnium Gatherum was on this album cycle. You did that tour with the Dark Tranquility, Amorphous, and Moonspell. So tell me about like making this album because this holds a place in my heart.
We got signed to Century Media just before that album, so we got the urge to show the world that now we have the best label behind us, like, and now we have to give it our best shot, and we were aiming for a full blast album, like with some really kick-ass songs and some technical parts, and we got a new drummer who was highly influenced to death, and everything just clicked on that album. I really think it's a fine piece of Omnium Gatherum catalog, and that tour we did in the States was the Amorphous, Moonspell, Dark Tranquility. That was one of the best times touring because all the bands were. I used to be a fanboy of all these bands in the early 90s when we formed the band, and then during the time on the roads, they became my really good friends, and then that tour was like a class meet.
Yeah, so it's like homie fest, like all the homies hanging together.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember having the VIP, and I remember meeting like all four bands, and that was fucking awesome. That's definitely one of my favorite shows I've been to.
Actually, now when you mentioned the VIP was the weirdest thing in that tour because it was like four bands, 20 people to meet.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, oh, hey.
Thinking as a fan, and I'm a Finnish shy person, I would be like, oh, whoa, or 20, do I have to shake hands with all these 20 people? And
yeah,
but people liked it too, so I guess it was worth it.
Yeah. And then kind of going into 2019, I want to talk a little bit about Vornat, that because I know you played with them for a little bit. Tell me about that.
Oh yeah, that's a true and evil black metal from my town from the 90s. I just played one show with them because they asked me in the 90s that if we ever have a show, will you gonna play with us? And I was like, in the 90s, oh, of course, all right. They were older, tough guys, real true and evil black metalers. And then I didn't hear anything from them for 20 years. And one day, Hauknifur, the guitarist singer, called me like, now we have the gig. Are you in? And I was like, whoa, let me check my calendar. And I was like, all right, I'm available. I can do it because I've promised to do it. And we played with Finnish black metal weirdos, Asasel, and that was a night of true black metal and moonshine.
Wow.
Funny times.
Yeah.
Really liked that gig, but maybe not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
Be in that circles anymore.
Yeah. And then kind of going into that same year, you did the next Insomnium album, Heart Like a Grave. I like this album. This is definitely one of my favorite albums from 2019. So tell me about like making this album.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite Insomnium albums too. We had like a really nice concept of getting, because everyone always identifies Insomnium as a really Finnish band. So we wanted to do an album full of like Finnish folklore, not in the folk metal way. I mean the real folk music of the Finland, and and the stories which are always really miserable and always someone dies. Usually it's your bride or something, and that's the influence on the album, and
Yeah.
I think it got pretty well, and that Finnish mentality gave a really extra boost for that album.
Yeah, it was also first album when you bumped it up to a 5-piece. So how did that sort of like affect like the dynamics within Insomnium?
Yeah, Jani started to fill in the band after Winter's Gate and did a few tours with us, and then as it became evident that Ville is not anymore touring and he's not anymore writing that much, even he's still in the band. So we want Jani to join the band, and he was happy, and that was good times.
Yeah,
Good
having
times with that lad since he disappeared lately.
into the, no pun intended, beyond.
Beyond.
Yeah.
And now, no pun intended, but now when people are sounding come to Brazil,
Yeah,
they already had one member there.
yeah.
Hiding.
Yeah, but then of course you start touring for A Heart Like a Grave, and then I know that whole certain virus that I refuse to name happened. So during that time, how hard was it? Because I know you did like one US tour, you only were able to play like one show, and so during that time, how hard was it? Because I know like the whole pandemic, it sort of like fucked up the whole music industry. So how did you guys manage to like combat against it?
Well, all I can say, of course, it was sad because Heart Like a Grave was it was supposed to be a major breakthrough for Insomnium. We did our biggest European tour just before the pandemic, and we had our calendar full and summer festivals full, and everything collapsed. So of course it sucked. But like I said, I was living in the pipeline the last 10 years before COVID. So I could even say for some time, I was happy that I was able to be at home with my wife and animals and not having any rush. And I think Finnish people even liked the COVID period at first because we like to be at home and we like to be alone and don't like to see too many people. So that was a perfect timing.
And just like catch your breath and everything.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it was too long, so it destroyed everything. But I just started to keep my mental health and sanity together, like working with music too much, I would say. I think the afterglow of COVID for me was like 2 new bands, and I think I did 4 full-length albums and 3 EPs during those 2 years break. So
yeah, of course, like you have like so many bands, Marcus, like from like Insomnium, Omnium Gatherum to like, of course, I'm the Night, which we'll get into in a moment. So with all these bands, like how do you like manage to find like a balance between everything thing? And like, is there like a certain like different like mind frame depending on like the bands that you play with, or do you have or you're able to have like free reign depending on like the bands or like projects that you're involved with?
it's like a disease which I'm not in control of. I just love music and things happened. And I have to say it is difficult, especially nowadays, having 4 bands, which all of the bands starts to be real bands and stuff, and every now and then you just cannot find any time to write music. But nowadays my brain works weird ways, like I'm like a schoolboy going against teacher. Like yesterday I was I should be writing a new Omnium Gatherum album as we speak, but I just get anything done. And then accidentally I started jamming with my black metal guitar, and I write a new I Am the Night song. So my brain is having a battle with me. So I'm not going to do this. What do you want me to do? That?
But then of course before that, I know in 21 you did the latest Omnium Gatherum album, Origin. I love this album. This is definitely one of my favorite albums from 2021, sort of like coming back a little bit from the pandemic. So what was the thought process like making this album?
I also think that album has some positive impacts from the COVID, because it was supposed to be released a year earlier, but when we got all the time in the world, we just wanted to postpone this album, and we continued writing and producing that album and into perfection, and I think we succeeded. if we would have released that album 1 year earlier, it would have
Probably got buried.
Yeah, less buried to the time and dust, and also not being that good as it is, because as there was all the time in the world for songwriting, I really gave my all hours to the music back then and really dive deep to that album.
Yeah. And then of course the same year you did the Argent Moon EP from Insomnium. I love this. It's only like 4 songs, but it's just absolutely a banger. So how did this come to be?
That was supposed to be released earlier because the songs were written really fast in the world break, and we just wanted to do like a bastard cousin of Heart Like a Grave. It's still the same themes on the Heart Like a Grave albums, and it's more mellow album. So
yeah, it's just like a very kind of relaxing kind of vibe when I listen to it.
Yeah, we wanted to do like a mellow Insomnium ballads album, and we already had in mind that now people are thinking we are getting old and lazy and just playing this kind of soft music, but we already had here that the next album will be more black metal-ish, more aggressive with the grim topics. So that's why we did it, and wanted to hear people criticizing the mellow.
And I love how you made like a music video for like every song on this EP. So how did that come to be?
It was just like a idea of our label that if you do an EP, it's more like a digital release. They first would have wanted that to be released only as a digital singles, but I'm a huge musical nerd, and I collect CDs and vinyls, and
as do I. You could see like in the back.
Yeah, that's my my
I have like the rest of my music CDs right here.
Yeah,
I have like 2,900 plus.
Yeah, that's like my cave on another room.
Yeah.
But yeah, I said like we need to get this EP released and not just digital singles. And in the 90s, I loved when bands were doing like a lot of EPs, and early 2000s. As also the first Omnium Gatherum album. And luckily, Century Media said that now it would be a good idea to do like a digital release first and then physical EP. So
yeah. And like having those videos almost feels like in a way like a movie, like it telling like a story, like a good visual representation.
Yeah. The first 2 videos are actually a story. The Conjurer and Reticent. They were made by Vesa Ranta of Sentenced, and they are like continuing each other.
And then I know that going into 23 you did no wait I'm kind of jumping ahead, because in 22 you also finally did I Am the Night with their debut full-length album While the Gods Are Sleeping, and I love that, and it's just fucking sick black metal, because I'm a huge black metal fan. So how'd that whole band come to be, and how did you decide to like form another black metal band?
It's a long story. When back in the late 90s, me and Omnium Gatherum bass player Janne had a black metal band called Vanhala, and we did 1 demo with Vanhala, and it was buried by time and dust, and there was not enough time to do this stuff until 2020. I had some old song skeletons in the closet, and then I just called Janne that should we do this band now, because we have time, and we both worship like old Emperor and old Dissection and old Mayhem, so it was time to do this. And then I just called my what is the word, my wife's brother Okko, that do you want to sing on this, and Valtteri from Paradise Lost, now Opeth, that do you want to play drums on these songs, and they were in immediately, and that was a really nice project to be. But now it's a real band, and for example, next Friday we are playing in Tuska Festival in Helsinki, and we've been doing many festivals in Finland already. And
nice. Is there any plans to bring I Am the Night to the States for a tour one day?
I'm not sure about the tour, but we already played 70,000 Tons of Metal, so that was our first time outside Finland. But hopefully we can play some shows. Unfortunately, there's a limited days in the year of human life and limited hours, but I really hope that we can do at least some tour with I Am the Night, because I love to play that, and it's something pretty different that I'm doing with Insomnium and Omnium Gatherum, also in live, getting all the makeup and rituals together.
Yeah, never say never, my friend. And then
Never.
talking about the last Insomnium album in Anno 1696, I thought that was a great album. Like, tell me about like making that and how has like the album cycle been like for Anno 1696?
Yeah, it started already same time than Argent Moon. Exactly, Lillian's song was already supposed to be on the Argent Moon, but then we decided to drop it out because to get the more mellow vibe and not fast song on the Argent Moon. So at that point we decided that the next album will be more grim and more blackened melodic death metal, and the Neil came out that he could maybe write this story again like on the Winter's Gate, so it would be a concept album, and slowly it became together, and we again had like too much stuff for that album, so we decided to divide it to Anno 1696 album and Songs of the Dusk EP, because nobody likes too long releases anymore. At least not me. I like the releases being like compact, like
just
45 minutes is the perfect.
Yeah, just get like to the point, no bullshit, no nothing.
Yeah, then it whatever. Some new Slash albums have been like what 17 songs or something. That's way too much for like one album.
Yeah, and then of course last year you also did the Slasher EP from Omnium Gatherum. Like, tell me about like that EP. Is that like something to hold fans over while we wait for the follow up to Origin?
That was like the Nick Cordell Marches in EP. That was the main point of doing that EP. We were thinking like, should we just write a full length album? But we wanted to get Nick presented soon, so we wanted to do this EP as like a quick release. We did the Slasher song and Maniac cover. Those were the new tracks for the Slasher EP, and what was the song name? Sacred and Lovelorn. They were already old songs from the Origin sessions. So
yeah. And then was it like working with Nick on guitar? Of course, now your new guitar bro. So was it like working with him?
It was great, of course. Nick is a great player and great dude. And the difficulties we had was that there was still these traveling restrictions. So Nick had to record his parts in the United States, and we did our parts in Finland, and the album was mixed in Sweden. So
yeah, that had to be wild.
Remotely, but that was weird for the first dance to be.
Yeah. And how does that sort of like affect the dynamic, being like he's from, of course, America and the rest of y'all are from Finland? How does that sort of like affect like the dynamic within Omnium Gatherum?
I think it's only good. Like Nick is the most Finnish dude in America, and he have still got some international movement to our Finnish asses, so we are not that that silent or something. It's been really good. Like
okay. And then of course the last thing I'd love to talk about is of course your new band Cemetery Skyline, which with Mikhail from Dark Tranquility, Centauri from Amorphous, Victor from Dimmu Borgir, and I love those songs you released like Violent Storm, The Coldest Heart, and In Darkness. So how did the idea to come to be to form Cemetery Skyline?
It was 2020, 70,000 Tons of Metal, when one drummer from one Swedish band came to me and started to strangle me in a nice friendly manner and said like, we need to form a band. And I was like, all right, what kind of band? Gothic metal. And I was like, all right, I love Typo Negative and Sisters of Mercy and Paradise Lost and whatnot, Mission. And then world stopped and I started writing some songs, and I called Santeri at first that, would you want to join this kind of new adventure? And he was immediately in, and then we just got these friends along the road to form the band, and then started writing music, and now this Swedish drummer became too busy with his normal life, so he was not able to join the band that actually he formed, which is funny.
Yeah.
But that became a nice story. So Vesa from Sentence was a evident option for this because he's been doing music videos for Insomnium and Dark Tranquillity and Amorphis also. So it was easy, and this is a bit like worshipping Sentenced musical wise also a bit. So he was a good option, and we worked silently with this band for 3 years before coming out of the closet. So we were well prepared before entering the world, and now we have the full album ready for releasing, and it will be out later this year. And
you pretty much led me into my next question, like what's the status with like the Cemetery Skyline album? So how far along is the new album? Like we already got those new songs and they absolutely kick ass.
Yeah, the album is, I can honestly say it's a good album.
Yeah,
I think I've never done any album like 3 or 4 years, and we really produced this album like Def Leppard produced Hysteria, or Guns N' Roses produced Chinese Democracy, which is not maybe that good album, but like we really took the time and space for this album, and it's ready to be unleashed in October this year, and we are playing our first show next month in John Smith Festival in Finland, and there's already some more live action for next year. We'll see how much we can do. Of course, it's the worst lineup to try to do some real touring because you have to think about 100 bands schedules to fit together. But
it's wild. I can even imagine all that.
But it's too good to be not doing the shows and doing the albums, because the band that was supposed to start as a project, it's too good and too much fun to play with these guys and love to hang out with those guys. So it's too good to not do a lot of stuff with this band.
All right.
So,
and then of course, like the final thing I want to talk about is talking about like your guitar playing and gear, because I know you have like some like sickest guitar tones and everything. I'm always curious about like your rig setup, because I see like the Randy Rhoads guitar in the background, and I see like an Eddie Van Halen right there. So I'm guessing like they're one of your influences. So
my biggest heroes.
Yeah.
Eddie and Randy.
Hell yeah. So I'm always curious about like in terms of like with any of your bands, like what's like your guitar setup in terms of like the guitars you play, like strings, pedals, and amps and stuff.
Yeah. Well, Jackson is my main axe, being like since I was 13, and I do have some other guitars also, but mainly from the Jackson brand, like Charvels and EVH, Eddie Van Halen's and stuff, and that's used Seymour Duncan pickups and Eddie Van Halen Wolfgang pickups on some other guitars, and my strings are SIT, which I'm endorsed by the company from Ohio, I think, and it was, of course, depends on the tuning which I'm using, because I am the 90s in standard and OG is in C sharp and Insomnium is in D, and Cemetery Skyline is something in between. So the strings vary from 10 to 46 to 11 to 52. And amp-wise, I'm endorsed by EVH amplification, and I usually use EVH stuff on the albums, but live I've used those only as a power amp, and I have my Neural DSP quad codecs for live brain of my sound nowadays. I used to have Axe FX, but not anymore because Neural DSP is better.
Nice. Nice. So before we go, just want to thank you, Markus, for this conversation. It's great to have you on and learn about your history. It's just anything else with your bands that you would like to also plug to sort of like wrap this up.
You covered it better than anyone already, so you remembered more of my bands that I did.
And yeah, I appreciate it, man. So just any also final words you want to say to the viewers that are watching this?
Thank you for watching my mess of my messy musical career, and hope to see you on the road, and thank you for doing this deeper documentary, like this kind of interview from the usual normal kind of. So this was fun.
Hell yeah. Glad you like it. So everybody, Markus Vanhala, we'll see you next time.